got a Barbarella silver swimsuit. And when she needs to shelter from reality, she takes a dip in my day.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, there's a band. They're from England. They play indie rock music. They're cold and kind of monkey-like.
If you say so.
The Arctic Monkeys have a new album out called AM. Have any other bands ever done their initials, Tom, as an album name?
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few. Velvet Underground.
There's also some that have had AM as an album title, like Wilco.
That's right.
They had the periods in there. But yeah, Velvet Underground for sure, using the initials. But it's actually kind of a cheeky play because the album cover is AM as in AM/FM, amplitude modulation. But then Arctic Monkeys, the initials of the band. And I think that's actually a good introduction to this album.
See, I thought it was more like a wireframe bra.
Oh, yeah?
That's what I thought it was.
Well, that's probably what they were originally going to call the album.
Okay.
That's
just bra.
Well, now I'm going to make that album. That's a great album
title.
But I really think it's a good introduction to this album and this band because really what I would say characterizes them best is being kind of a cheeky, fun, sassy band.
Absolutely.
Throughout their entire discography, I mean, they make great British rock music, you know, some punk inflections, some Brit-pop inflections, even some dancier elements every now and then. But Alex Turner, the vocalist and guitarist, he just has this energy and this sass about it that's really cool. And coming out of their fourth album, Suck It and See, which we reviewed when it came out, and we weren't too keen on.
We weren't, and I think we were very much against the grain when that came out. Like these guys have been out now for over 10 years. They have not stayed within the margins per se in their albums. They're willing to take risks and try new things, and Suck It and See definitely, like, it was kind of a polarizing effort. A lot of people really loved it. Tom and I did not, however.
No, I mean, it had some great tracks. I still come back to the track Black Treacle, for example.
Yeah, that's a great track.
But I felt like it was just... I felt like it was them trying to take themselves too seriously, I guess is how I would put it. Whereas the thing that really has always had an appeal for this band is just their youthful, just carelessness. And I think that some of that comes back in this album, some of that energy, but they present it very differently. Some of the elements of the sound that has really changed, well, one in particular is the beats, the drums. Because while you have the very kind of Arctic Monkeys typical energetic, frantic guitar, usually there's also that energetic, frantic drumming to match. But here it's a little bit more slowed down. It's a little bit more just on beat and kind of pounding, and it sets up this groove throughout the song. The bass plays a big part in that as well. So
there were a number of times on this album that I actually felt like they might have consulted with Dr. Dre in how they were setting up these beats. Like seriously, there's stuff on here that sounds like it's straight off of, you know, Dre 2K.
Arabella.
Oh yeah, and
that groove.
I mean, and it's just it sounds like it wouldn't work, but it works so well. Just the stomp that they have provides like a really good backdrop, I think, for the sound they were going for on AM.
Yeah, I think stomp is a good way to put it, because it just implies that, like, right on beat, just pounding, but they're still able to incorporate a lot of cool rhythms and great songwriting overall. I mean, terrifically catchy melodies. That's what this band has always excelled at. So, for me, I feel like this is a bit of a return to form. While I was disappointed with Suck It and See, some fans were, and some fans still loved it, and that's fine. You're always going to have something like that when a band departs from their original sound a little bit. I like that this is a bit of a return to form, but I don't feel like they're repeating themselves. I think that they're growing in the right areas and moving forward in a positive direction.
One thing that the Arctic Monkeys do on this record is they really focused on presentation. Each one of these songs are extremely polished sounding. You don't have a lot of loose edges. These all of these songs are very structured. They're very formal in their presentation. They're produced very pristinely. And what they do is, rather than focusing on crazy, you know, songwriting ideas and song structure changes and things like that, they don't use a lot of. I wouldn't ever call the song structures repetitive here. Like they're following a formula. formula or anything, but they do have some similarities track to track that I actually really liked how they approached it. What I found that Arctic Monkeys were doing is taking these melody lines that they would build, whether they're in the vocals or in the guitar work, and then they would just build them up and then just repeat them, and they would add layer upon layer upon layer to these melody builds that they were doing, and then they would just repeat these things over and over again. And in fact, what that does is a lot of times when you have the verse, chorus, song structure that I complain about a lot, the one reason why a lot of artists do that, particularly in pop music, is to just ingrain it into your skull so you have no choice but to go around singing that song for the rest of the day. Arctic Monkeys are actually doing something quite similar from a strategic songwriting perspective. They're just doing it in a much more clever, witty way than any other artist out there right now, or at least presenting their music in in this fashion.
Another thing that they're doing is incorporating a lot of old classic, I would say, like 60s and 70s vocal layer elements into this. You have the and stuff like that. Yes, very much so. And it's those little vocal inflections and layers that didn't need to be there at all, but they put it in there to reference a certain style, bring that more of that kind of like disco rock element into it, and just make it much more infectious.
Yeah, and that especially happened, I think, towards the middle and back half of the album. I felt like the first few tracks on this album really tended to be a little bit more on the rock, edgier side.
Yeah, you're definitely right.
And then there was a couple ballads there in the middle, and then it goes into some more of experimental, yet still very polished work there.
Yeah.
A little bit lower key, too. I really felt like they did a good job of balancing the eclectic background that this band has, really focusing on providing different sounds within one polished cohesion of just sound presentation. I thought they did a great job with that. If anything, the songwriting approach I talked about just a minute ago with adding the layers, the only thing that I was a little bit disappointed in is occasionally I would see them trying to build these layers or hear them trying to build these layers, and I wouldn't have the dynamic kick I felt that some of the songs needed. It would never reach the point, like it would go from like a 4 to a 7, but never went from a 2 to a 10. And that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear a little bit more on the upper end of the dynamic spectrum.
Yeah. Especially when you know that they're capable of that.
Absolutely.
You know they definitely can do that. I guess my only complaint really is, well, I don't really have many complaints. There was one song that I didn't like quite as much, and that's track 5, I Want It All. I think especially after just the solid barrage of the first 4 tracks, which I think were all incredibly good. That one sagged a little bit. You had mentioned a little bit of a lull in the middle. Track 6 and 7 both being kind of ballads, #1 Party Anthem and Mad Sounds. I actually like both of those tracks, but I think it might have been a mistake in albumization to have them right next to each other. Maybe one of them would have been better near the end, maybe like after Why'd You Only Call Me When You're High, or somewhere in there.
And track placement is so much more important when you have an album that's so where its strengths are based on the strengths of each track. This is not an albumized format. These songs don't flow into each other. Each song works independently of the other songs. However, because of the nice things that they did from a production standpoint and from a songwriting standpoint, it does have a cohesion to it. So the song placement, I think, played a bigger role, and I agree with you. I think that they could have separated those out and would have made it flow a little bit better. What are you going to give this to?
I'm going to give this an 85.
Wow, you really liked it.
I really liked it. The more I listened to it, the more I just found that it was solid in quality, and so many of these songs just stuck with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a little bit lower than you, but I still really like this album. I'm going 81.
All right.
So that puts this low to mid 80s, I think 83 overall from Velocities of Music. That's a stamp of approval. Go out and listen to AM and let us know what you guys thought about Arctic Monkeys' 5th album, because we'd love to talk with you about your thoughts and opinions. Leave us a comment at www.velocitiesofmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesofmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, give us your requests. 2013 album from back in the day, we don't care. We'll do it for you guys. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
I'm not sure if I